Welcome back. Well, crime and violence continues to be a major concern in the country. Former President Kgalema Motlanthe has spoken out against lawlessness, but one political writer says some of its aspects are caused by the failure of the ruling party to deliver better services. Many people have been complaining about lack of service delivery and the high rate of unemployment. So for more on this, we're joined now by political writer Ebrahim Harvey. Ebrahim, thank you so much for your time this morning. I mean, it's a very interesting piece that you penned out here saying that the former President Kgalema Motlanthe has got several blind spots. I mean, when you're referring to lawlessness as well as the extent of violence in the country, you're saying that this country has been entrenched in violence even when it comes to the colonial times. Even the way in which we had colonial rule imposed in this country was in a violent manner. When 1948 came about with the institution of apartheid, that was in itself violent, and the violence continues. From 1652, we've been seeing this violence, including up until 1994, when we were all allowed to vote.
Yeah, I struggled to hear you initially, but it's fine. You know, I've got the gist of what you were trying to say. You see, you have to be very careful, which I think Motlanthe doesn't do that. You know, I'm his authorized biographer, so I was surprised because, you know, I discussed this matter with him in many interviews I had with him for his biography. Yeah. You can never discuss the question of lawlessness and violence without taking into account as comprehensively as possible the social, economic and political context that gives rise to it. Now, you know, it's not just the question of violence during the apartheid times. Go and look at what's happened in this country from 1994. And to be specific about the ruling party should be the last to talk about lawlessness. And I mean, you know, if you look at how many times leading cadres, leaders of the eNCA have violated the law. Look how many times police repression have broken the law in townships dealing with the attempts to quell protests. But the reason why, you see, when I seen this piece and, you know, he was on the front cover of Financial Times, and I read the piece, and I was struck by the fact that he ignores the very things that I brought to his attention during those interviews. You can never condemn. I mean, this is the ruling party that called for this country to be made ungovernable. You know, to make... You can't, the question of law has to be addressed very carefully. When you violate the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, go and look at how many times the ANC has violated the condition, especially the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. That is lawlessness. When you break the law, it's lawlessness. You cannot just address mayhem and anarchy. You have to look at the wider ambit of the question of law and what is the violation of law and lawlessness. So that response that I penned in Financial Times was hopefully to address the need to address the question of lawlessness within a much wider socio-economic. I mean, we've got the worst crisis in South Africa ever. I mean, the townships are burning, it's falling apart, the infrastructural crisis. So what happened last year with the July unrest and the looting and the mayhem and the anarchy? Again, analysis will tell you it was instigated surely by people who were pro-Zuma and didn't like the fact that he was in prison. But they could only exploit what were underlying reasons of grievance, deep grievances in the townships, you know, and people went opportunistically on the looting spree and they pillaged shops and everything. So that is really the basic import of that response of Motlanthe, you know, which I hold to and which I could have added much more to in that piece, but you have space constraints, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm hoping we can hear each other better as this conversation progresses, Ebrahim. But then it sounds as though, does it not then risk, or the African National Congress, does it not risk then further marginalizing the electorate by on one side saying, you know what, there's lawlessness and violence in this country, but not being able to put themselves in the picture of how is it that lawlessness has been allowed to persist over the past 28 years?
Well, obviously, you know what you should do? Let the journalists go out. Let them identify all the leaders of the ANC, and I know them. I know them personally, most of them. Go and look where they live. These people live like kings and queens, man. Let me tell you that the leadership of the Nationalist Party under apartheid, I tell you now, never even lived. Go and look at how they live, and go and look at how their supporters and members in the black townships live. Then you tell me the first thing when people get angry, that they throw through the window completely is an abstract sense of morality and ethics. Don't do this, don't break the law. Look at how crime has exploded in this country. People breaking into homes, etc. You think you're going to tell them, no, the Bible says this, Christianity. No, people act because of the desperation that they find themselves in. Precisely because, and I've written at length about this, the explosion in the crisis in South Africa today has little with what you call white monopoly capital, white people in general. It has to do with what the ANC did from 1994, and especially what it did. Look at the townships. That's where the ANC's voters live. Go and look at what's happening in the townships, man, and go and look at how they live, and go and look at the 2016 local government election results and last year's national election. What does it tell you? The people are getting so heartful with the ANC, and you still see it reflected in the polls. It's absolute and unmitigated hypocrisy, I tell you, including with Motlanthe, to go and tell us about lawlessness, what people are doing, taking the law into their own hands. Look at how the ANC leadership, look at the Special Investigation Unit and the Zondo Commission of Inquiry reports of 2022. Go and look what they tell you. What is that? That is breaking the law. Corruption, looting of state public resources is the worst form of breaking of the law that you can think of. So,
well, Ebrahim, let me interject there because you're saying this about the lawlessness. Yeah, so you're saying this about the lawlessness and about how the ANC has further marginalized, and obviously then it's expressed with the 2016, we've got the 2019, the local government elections that we just came from. But also, the very same African National Congress that we're speaking about this morning keeps referring to we are renewing, we are reflecting on our mistakes, we're attempting to renew, we're attempting to actually listen and heed the call of the people, we're attempting to root out corruption even between our members as the African National Congress. The Nasrec resolutions around the step-aside resolution itself, we're attempting to see that manifest in the various echelons of the African National Congress. Do you think that is false information or false advertising that is being sold on behalf of the ANC?
Absolutely, and I'm answering, I say absolutely so. Let me tell you something. This whole thing, it's a myth. They started in 1997 at the Stellenbosch Conference. For 25 years, the ANC, and I've discussed this with Motlanthe, has been talking about renewal. Now, there must be something very seriously, systemically wrong with you if for 25 years you start telling us about you on a renewal cause. From 1997, 25 years, the ANC is still talking, and the president too, about renewal. And you know what's the ironical and contradictory is that in inverse proportion to this discourse of renewal, has corruption grown in the ranks of the ANC, and you see to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. I have penned pieces demolishing this myth of a renewal in the ANC. Now, let me show you what's the latest example of this myth of renewal. Ramaphosa says that with the 22 million rand spent on this on the flag, they've listened to the masses, and now they've ditched this flag thing. He's lying to you. Let me tell you something. He was part of the cabinet. They endorsed this 22 million rand being spent when people don't know where the next meal is. We are the worst poverty, the worst crisis ever. And the cabinet of which he's the leader accepted this 22 million rand to be spent. And then suddenly, this is how he jives. I know Cyril since 1982 when NUM was formed. Very well. He jives. This is what he does. Now he says, no, we listen to the people, so we're ditching this thing. But he doesn't tell the voters and the people that he was the leader of the cabinet, and they endorsed that 22 million rand to be spent. This is the ANC. Unfortunately, at the moment, you don't have another party that could beat the ANC. The polls may happen in 2020. But honestly, I think people are so fed up with the ANC in so many respects. But it's hypocritical, including of Ramaphosa, to now be suddenly, saying that they listen to people when the cabinet, can you imagine? This cabinet is the top rulers of this country, man. They accepted this 22 million rand. And now he jives and says no, because of the massive negative publicity and response to that 22 million rand. They're listening to people, and he had a chat with the minister, and they're going to ditch this thing. It's really is ingenuous, you know, to say the least.
But let me ask you this then, Ebrahim. I mean, you keep saying that people are so fed up with the African National Congress. But if people were so fed up with the African National Congress, we would not see the African National Congress still holding some kind of power. Now, there have been many political analysts that have said that, look, the African National Congress risks becoming a rural political party. 2024 provides almost an open playing field for, especially when it comes to the new political parties to come into the fold and the like. But are South African voters ready to vote for change? Or are they still stuck on the liberation movement loyalty that comes with voting for the first time in 1994, looking at these as liberators, being afraid to go back to apartheid times, that voting for anything different still becomes a big fear in the minds of South Africans? Are we ready to vote for someone or a political party that is different?
The answer to your question is a combination. It's not either or. It's not black and white. I did a piece. I've got a column at News 24. I dealt with this piece. This very question you're putting me now to 3 months ago. And I pointed out it's not. Let me explain to you. And you can see 2016 and 2021 results. People are waking up. But the reason why the masses of people historically and globally, they tend to remain loyal to their traditional organizations until a pole of attraction can emerge to rally, that they can rally their support around. That has not yet arisen. This is the problem, you know, especially with, I mean, the overwhelming majority in this country being black African people and expressed in the polls. But you can see the signs are there. The writing is on the wall with the results of 2016 and 21. So let me put it this way. When the people vote for the ANC reluctantly now, and you can see how it's changing, it's not because of the ANC. It's not because the ANC has done a good job. It's in spite of the terrible job that the ANC has done. Because why? Who do you vote for? Who do you vote for? Who's the opposition? Let me tell you, the only credible opposition, and I've said it before, despite my criticism of Malema and the EFF in many columns and articles, that is where I think something might happen, really. And I think you're going to find an increasing gravitation, although they haven't done great at the polls in 2000 last year. I think you'll find the deeper the disillusionment spreads amongst the black masses, you're likely to see the growth of the EFF, and who knows that Malema may end up one day, you know, being the president of this country. But that is what is happening. That is what it is. So it's a complex thing. You know, you can think for yourself, if people's basic daily needs are not being met, why would they continue to vote for a ruling party now 28 years in power, in office? You know, they continue because of the lack of feasible alternatives. And until that thing changes, besides the EFF in the opposition ranks, who is there? The DA is not hardly any a party that's really going to embody the aspirations, wishes and needs of the black working class. You need a party. Unfortunately, the people who are the Socialist Workers' Revolutionary Party of NUMSA, they didn't participate in last year's elections. The Workers' Socialist Party is too small and tiny to make any impact on elections. They don't even participate in the election. So that is the problem. The lack of a credible, and I must tell you, this is the only answer you're going to have in South Africa, is a socialist. Look what's happened to the SACP. The SACP is useless. And I've told Blade that in Zamandi many times. So there's no leftist socialist party. That is what you need in South Africa.
Ebrahim, I'm being told that unfortunately we're gonna break in communication just a short while, but it's always very insightful to actually hear from you there. We've got a political analyst, Ebrahim Harvey, giving us his perspective, an impassioned perspective, I must say, on the African National Congress, and particularly responding to the writings of the former head of state, Kgalema Motlanthe, regarding lawlessness and violence in the country. And him saying that, Ebrahim Harvey, that is, saying that how can you remove yourself as a political party, the African National Congress, from this equation, because you're central to exactly why is it that there's lawlessness and violence in this country.